Well, hello everyone, and happy Friday, and welcome to Instruction and Outreach for Diverse Populations International Students. This is the first webinar in what we hope will become a very popular webinar series that will focus on a different population each time. Okay. My name is Amanda Click. I'm the business librarian at American University in Washington, D.C. And this webinar is hosted by the ACRL Instruction Section's Instruction for Diverse Populations Committee and the Library Marketing and Outreach Interest Group. We're aiming for about 45 minutes here today. We wanted this session to fit squarely into your lunch break if you do, in fact, have time to take a lunch break in your schedule. So aiming for 45 minutes, we have 3 speakers that are going to share their fabulous ideas with us, and we plan to have time at the end of the session for some questions. So you've noticed that you don't have mic rights, but you can enter into the chat box. My colleague Joan Pettit is going to be monitoring the chat box. So as you're listening to our speakers, please feel free to answer to enter questions you may have in the chat box. She'll keep track of them, and then we will address as many as we have time for at the end of the session. So I don't want to take any more time away from our fabulous speakers. Today we have with us Anamika Megwalu from San Jose State University, Mark Matson from Penn State University, and Karen Bordenero from Brock University. They're each going to take some time to tell us how they support international students on their own campuses. So Anamika, take it away.
Thank you, Amanda. Good morning, everyone, and for many of you, it's afternoon, so good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anamika Megwalu, Assessment and Engineering Librarian here at San Jose State University. In the next slide, I'm going to tell you a bit about the background of our international student population. I'm going to take myself off the video. It might be distracting. So from now on, you won't see me until the end. In fall 2017, SJSU enrolled over 3,000 international students. A large number of our international students come from College of Engineering. So what does SJSU Library do for student outreach? It actually organizes many events for this purpose. You can see I have listed all the events there, and I have also included information literacy classes because a lot of outreach organically happens as we meet students in our IL sessions. However, in the following slides, I'm going to specifically talk about I-Week celebration since I have been a member of this I-Week task force for the last couple of years. I-Week at SJSU is a celebration of the International Education Week. This is actually an initiative from the U.S. Department of Education to celebrate the importance of international educational exchange programs. And it also aligns with one of our university's learning goals of students developing a diverse and global perspective. Next, we will take a glimpse of what I-Week celebration looks like at SJSU. At SJSU, librarians managed to organize multiple activities for I-Week celebration with very little budget. In 2016, a 2-week celebration included 5 activities costing only $200. The I-Week task force was comprised of 5 librarians at that time: Diana Wu, Adriana Poe, Krista Bailey, Linda Crotty, and myself. But the activities were run by many more librarians. In order to minimize cost and time commitment, the task force decided to recruit librarians who had at least an hour to spare to run these fun activities for our students. The incentive for the participating librarians was the opportunity to engage with students in informal and interactive settings. The event was actually very popular and was publicized in SJSU's newspaper, Spartan Daily. So next we will look at a couple of those events, not all 5. The first one is Interactive World Map. The purpose of the event was to acknowledge and celebrate student diversity and to raise awareness of the fact. This is a low-tech, low-cost, highly engaging activity that does not require librarians' presence. All you need is a laminated world map, and we also had separate maps for the United States and India. We provided sticker dots that encourage students to identify places they relate to with those dots. These maps were placed on the collaborative floor for the entire 2 weeks, and 45 countries were identified at the end of the event. You can gauge the popularity of this event from the picture to the right. There was an article about this in Spartan Daily as well. And the next one is speed networking. The purpose of this activity was to actively connect with SJSU students, talk about their struggles with academic work, their perceptions of libraries and librarian roles, and informing them of what the SJSU library and librarians have to offer. Since this was an International Education Week, we offered students snacks from various countries. This was a 1-day, 2-hour activity, and many librarians participated, volunteered to run this activity. We were able to meet 45 students within this short amount of time. The most important prop was the Librarian Liaison Board. You can see a small snippet of it to the right, and many students learned about their liaison librarians for the first time and took pictures of them for future reference. As you can see to the right, we also included tiny flags besides each librarian to show the diversity among us. I'm going to briefly talk about the advantages of speed networking. In the 2017 IWeek event, we implemented a formal assessment in which one of the questions was, what did you learn during this activity? The assessment showed that students learned the most about library resources and how librarians can help them with their academic work at the speed networking session. International students have varied perceptions of library services and roles of librarians based on their experiences in their native countries. As such, they cannot understand concepts, and sometimes they cannot understand concepts such as course reserves and interlibrary loan, even when they see it on promotional materials. So in graduate student orientations, where the majority are international engineering students, I do explain to them what a course reserve service is, along with the location of the service. This kind of event allows us to speak to students and help them become familiar with their library in the U.S. So what did we learn from these events? Take every opportunity to speak to all students, especially international students. They really appreciate it. Sometimes it is even necessary to go to their study tables and invite them to participate in these events, as they might be hesitant to join in the beginning. It's important to be conscious of cultural differences. For example, advertising free food and throwing swags at the students might be offensive or not acceptable to some students from certain cultural backgrounds. So knowing the international student population specific to our institutions, I think is very important. Equally important is implementing a mini formal assessment. It certainly gives us an idea of events that students get the most out of. And lastly, I wanted to share with you the poster that 2016 IWeek Task Force members presented at the ALA conference last year. I'm extremely thankful to all the task force members, especially Diana Wu, who invited me to join the group, and also thanks to SGC librarians who devoted their time. Next, Mark Matson will share his experience at Penn State University.
Thank you very much, Anamika. My name is Mark Matson. I'm the Global Partnerships and Outreach Librarian here at the Penn State Libraries. And I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk with you about what we're doing here at our university. If you could go to the next slide, that'd be great. So while I only have 7 minutes to try to give you a picture of what we're doing here at Penn State across our 30-something library locations in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I do need to take a little bit of time from that to preface my talk with the idea that although I'm the one speaking to you today, it's actually because of the amazing, talented, and hardworking colleagues that I have across all of our locations that I have anything to share with you at all. Providing excellent services to international students and really any of our patrons is a team effort, and we have fantastic instruction librarians, training coordinators, welcome desk staff, outreach coordinators, PR and marketing staff who produced the digital welcome sign that you'll find throughout the university libraries that's on your screen now, and many, many, many other people who all make this possible. So basically, I just wanted to say, you're seeing my face, but really, I'm representing hundreds of people who are doing amazing things to produce programming and services for international students. You can go to the next slide. I was really happy to see Anamika was mentioning assessment at the end of her portion of the talk, because the first thing I wanted to talk about was assessment. A lot of what we do at Penn State is focused on data-driven decisions, and some of my colleagues had produced a really fantastic set of reports that were based off of different assessment studies that they did for international students. It allows us the opportunity to measure ideas that we might have for programming against data to make that programming more effective, and it also assures that we confirm that what we're doing is, on the right path to achieve our objectives in relation to international students. So the assessment reports that came out of these different studies were basically 3 different parts. There was the Ithaca SNR survey of undergraduates that we were able to pull a lot of data from and get kind of a base understanding of what our international students were seeing the libraries as providing them and seeing needs that they had. And then we did targeted international student focus groups based on what we had learned from the Ithaca survey. And then finally, there was a survey and interviews done with library staff across the campuses that have the most international students to find out what the perceptions were of libraries, faculty, and staff who are interacting with international students on a daily basis. And we came up with lots of different interesting things. A couple of them that I wanted to point out was there's a real sense of pride in the international student community as far as their use of the libraries. A couple of the students had brought up funny kind of things about, well, on Friday nights when all of the domestic students go out to party, it's the library is filled with international students working hard. So there's a real sense of community and pride that the international students have, and they really see the libraries as a home for them. We also found out that there needs to be like a critical mass number of international students studying at the university library to project an open and inclusive space that other international students want to join in. Many times we heard from students that it's because there's so many other international students here that they feel like this is the place to be for studying and even socializing. Another key finding was that library jargon is particularly confusing to international students who might lack the context or experience with that those terms. And the value of international collections, particularly newspapers and multicultural exhibits, are really important in that sense of belonging at the university. And all of this was done by some of my colleagues, Steve Borelli, Don Amsbury, Lana Munip, Aliyah Gant, Chao Su, and Susan Lane all did different parts of these surveys. So we've been able then to put some of this stuff into practice. You can go to the next slide. So we wanted to create a welcoming atmosphere at Penn State. The objectives are creating a welcoming and comfortable environment for international students across Penn State University libraries, and ensure that students feel that their culture and they themselves are valued and represented here in Penn State. We do this through lots of different things that are done elsewhere as well. We put up, some of our campuses have international flags and signage that include all of the countries that international students on that campus come from. A very easy thing to do is an international newspaper headline. We have one wall inside our newspapers, our News and Microforms library, and it's right when you come into the libraries where they put up international front pages from different newspapers every day. And international students feel very welcomed when they see their country represented in that. So it's super simple and super easy, but we had so many people comment on how that made them feel to walk in and see their hometown's newspaper presented. We also do things like international student board games, and we're working on an international student web page for our libraries. We're looking at multilingual access for the libraries. We're looking at making part of the library's website available in Chinese, which is the largest international student population that we have. And we also have at many campuses selected international student liaisons for that campus. We can go to the next slide. So some of the outreach things that we do here at Penn State are student orientations. We're present at those, we present at them, and we also last year put up here at University Park, we put up a pop-up library as a part of the resource fair that international students had as part of their orientation, where they could check out materials. We also brought in one of the 3D printers, and we're printing out little giveaways and trying to get students to understand what we offer in the libraries. Several campuses do country-specific exhibits. Oftentimes it's related to a lunch or a cultural dinner. We do international student lunch chats, where a librarian will invite international students in to talk about their experiences with the libraries. We have many different intercultural nights where we invite people for different events. And we do international community events. Oftentimes we do these with partnerships with different campus groups, international student associations, or even nonprofit community groups as well. And we go out and meet with the different international student associations and give kind of like a what the libraries can do for you type presentation. And then I didn't put this on the slide, but we also do a lot of instruction for international students through our ESL 15 classes here. We regularly we regularly meet with 100% of the ESL 15 classes during a semester here at the University Park campus. So we have a really good relationship with the instructors that provide those classes for those students. You can go to the next slide. We also do a lot of workshops within the libraries so that we're equipping ourselves with the knowledge and skills to provide outstanding resources and support for international student populations. And then besides looking at our own practices and our own knowledge, we also do outward-facing workshops so that we are making sure that our university community and also our local community sees the value of international neighbors, and we can facilitate some dialogue and interaction between those groups. So we often do working with international patrons trainings here within the libraries itself. We do a lot of workshops where we bring in international students to talk about their experiences. So it's not something that we're doing a workshop on a group, but we are inviting that group in to give a workshop, you know, sharing their experiences with us. We also have done international name pronunciation workshops, which have been very popular, and this is an idea that I got from Michael Fleerl at Purdue. We've done a couple of pronunciation workshops for Chinese and Indian names, and this helps for our staff to feel more comfortable in pronouncing those names, and hopefully will make students feel more welcome in the library when we're able to more closely pronounce their names correctly. And oftentimes we're doing these in collaboration with other groups. So we have global programs, we have a nonprofit, Global Connections, and all kinds of other groups on campus or off campus that we work with to produce some of these workshops. We're currently working on one with the College of Education and a group that does English for professional purposes to do how to create an inclusive community in a classroom full of international students and domestic students. And go to the next slide, please. So we have the new, one example of a new program that I wanted to bring up because I was asked to give some specific examples of things that we're doing, is an idea that is being developed by Joy Jackson, who is one of our instruction librarians at Penn State Harrisburg. And one of the things that she's looking at doing is putting together a collection of popular international titles, both in translation and in original language, and then starting a book club for domestic and international students. And each student can read the book in their own language, so they feel like they fully understand that text and they can, you know, read it at the same speed as everybody else. And then come back together and discuss the common themes of the book and see it from different perspectives while still being able to feel very comfortable in their knowledge of what they had read. And facilitating discussions and then adding it to our regular reading, leisure reading collection is one of the kind of cool and innovative things that is happening here at Penn State. You can go to the next slide. And we have a whole bunch of other stuff that we're doing that I don't have time to get into. We have partnered with our Iranian Student Association to put on a year-long film series the first Wednesday of every month. We do a docu-night, which is Iran via documentaries. That's free and open to the public. We have the Many Faces of Intercultural Dialogue Showcase, which I gave an ALA lightning talk about, and we'll have a link to that later on. But basically, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that I can't fit here. So if you want to talk more about it with me, I would love to talk with you about it, and you can contact me. At the next slide has my contact information. So yes, I'm again representing all of the people at Penn State who are doing really great work, and we would love to hear more about what you're doing, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to talk about those. So at this point, I would like to hand it over to Karen.
Okay. Great. Thanks very much, Mark. I feel totally intimidated now going after Mark because they're doing so much stuff at Penn State, and it's a much bigger place than Brock University. However, I am thrilled to be here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about a couple small projects that we did here that I think everybody listening would be capable of doing at your own place. So just to give you an example of how we work with international students. So I'm speaking to you from Brock University, which is in Southern Ontario in Canada, and the library is in this building that you're looking at. I'm talking to you from the 11th floor, and the library is floors 2 and then 5 through 10 underneath me. So that's where I'm coming from. Also, just a special shout out to any Canadians out there who can tell immediately, probably after 30 seconds, that I have a very American accent myself. So I am an American person. I'm working in a Canadian library, and the only reason I mention that is because I think it gives me sort of rapport with international students. It really does, because I had to get a work permit to work here. They had to get a student permit to be here, so I feel like I have something in common with them, and I always work best with people when I have something in common with them individually. Okay, so we can go through my slides. I just have a few slides. The next slide this is the overview of the two projects. I'm going to talk about the Personal Librarian email project, which I hope people listening are familiar with, this sort of automated email messages, and I'll explain why that was a little it was kind of a big deal here at Brock University. And then the second one I'm going to talk about is just a very simple welcome poster we designed here that actually was very successful and people really liked it. Okay, so first about the Personal Librarian Program. Those are real ESL students right there. That is a pose shot, but those are real students who go to the university here. So the reason this is a big deal is because I'm a liaison librarian and I'm attached to academic departments like Applied Linguistics and Modern Languages, Literatures, and Cultures, the programs that students can get a degree in. ESL Services is a pre-university program, so they aren't recognized in sort of the same way in some ways as some of the academic programs. So the ESL students are studying to improve their English language proficiency so they can come into an academic department program. So it took some convincing to get the people who sort of run this Personal Librarian Program from the university end to sort of agree to have the ESL students as a recognized group here. This just happened this past fall, so these were our first messages going out were this past fall. I will say everybody in the library was super supportive though, so it was more the university marketing and communications people, but it's been great. Actually, it's been great. So the next slide, I think, if we can switch to the next slide, this just gives you an example of what one of the messages looks like. What happens is that we have a small group in the library who compose these messages. They try to make them fairly informal, and they embed links to library resources and services. So the point of sending this to ESL students is they feel that they're part of this university as well. They are students just like other students. We're happy to work with them. They are welcome in the library. They're an important piece of the groups of students that we work with. So this picture of me is from a few years ago. I'm not sure it's a good idea to put an old picture in, but that was just part of the template that was set up for me to contact them. Then the next slide, I think, shows, some responses. And these, again, are real ESL students right there in that pink background right there. Those are real ESL students. So I got, you have your embedded direct email address in these automated messages. Oh, and you can actually change them. They're sort of a form message, but each one of us can change it to reflect whatever department we're sending messages to. So these were direct individual responses to me from individual ESL students who got it. And I was really sad to see the middle one right there with the two very sad looking faces. So, but it ended up to be a good thing because I met this person and then she was successful in what she wanted to find. And then the last one, if I have a search problem, I will ask you, that was a happy face right to start with. So it was really, it's such a simple thing to do something like this, but it made them feel so much more included that they were part of the university. I'm really happy we could do this Personal Librarian Program. So honestly, I would encourage everybody out there to try to do this. It's a real, not a very time-consuming, but a very direct way to make contact with students who may feel uncomfortable making the first move to come see you, to do an outreach sort of program. So that was the first one. The second small project, very, very small project, was just a welcome poster. So what this was meant to reflect, like most universities now are trying to reflect internationalization. So what I did is I went to a meeting and I invited people. This was strictly a volunteer new international students, I invited them to sign basically a piece of paper in their native languages saying, my name is and I come from. So you can see the French one at the bottom there. So we collected many examples of handwriting from people who were willing to volunteer just to put their name on and just to see their own native language. And it was sort of a welcome to all the international students in the library. So we, at the time this poster was made, which is a couple years ago now, our graphic artist in the library collected them all, digitized it, and then created this poster that you can see sort of the small snapshot of on the right. And then the next slide, I think, is on where we displayed it. So we displayed it in paper format as a big welcome sign on the door of the library itself. I think the next slide shows the door of the library itself. And then, right, so that's, although it's undergoing renovation now, but that's where we displayed it, a big paper sign of that, then throughout the library. And then, of course, we had a digital version on our website. So people were really thrilled. I actually heard a lot of the students who had signed the poster, they brought their friends and said, that's my handwriting, that's my name, that's my signature. So they were very proud. And they also felt like they were part of the welcome to fellow students from the same country. So it made them feel like it wasn't just the library saying a welcome, it was them helping the library welcome all the students to the university. So that was a second very simple project that had sort of a big success rate, and it was very easy to do. So I would encourage everyone to try that second one as well. The next slide, I think, just gives you, right, the International Students LibGuide. I put this together originally for ESL students who are coming here to learn English, but I expanded it to native English-speaking students who are also learning foreign languages, with the idea that we're all language learners. Everybody is a language learner, and it was to try to make ESL students again feel part of this bigger universe of other students learning languages as well. So some of the links on here are specific to material to help non-native speakers of English learn or improve their English language proficiency skills, reading, writing, speaking, listening, but it's also for foreign language learners as well. So the URL for this is in with the resource guide, I think. Everyone is welcome to take a look at this. And then the slide after this one just shows you little snapshot pictures of some of the other projects that we did. And I have links to all these little projects, well, most of these little projects, on the International Student LibGuide. So the IELP Readers, that's Intensive English Language Program. That's a 14-week-long semester course to improve English language proficiency. We have a set of these easy readers. They're it's kind of like abridged versions of famous works in English made for language learning purposes. So we have a collection of those in paper format, its own little collection within the larger library collection. The library tour in the lower left, I'm not embarrassed about it, but it was a brand new effort. So with the person who works in the makerspace, I found a Chinese native speaking student and an Arabic native speaking student to record basically welcome to the library. I had written a script in English and they translated it and read it in their native languages. And then what I wanted to do was actually get the sort of the written versions of those sort of at the bottom. I just have the English transcripts in there though. So it's sort of, it's just a beginning work. It's a work in progress, but at least it's a start. So I put links on those on the International Student LibGuide. The workbook is something I've done with library instruction classes I've done with ESL students. All of you are welcome to use it if you want. It's just some ways I go in and help them work with library learning objectives. This picture, come by, we're open, which to me, it looks like a Campbell soup can, but maybe that's just because I'm an older person. I don't know. That is our self-access card. A self-access card, it's the same idea of the library going out to other places on campus. So I would sit at this several times. I'd go over to the international students, which is where a lot of the English language classes are for the ESL students. One particular place on campus, unfortunately across the street from the main campus, but just to let them know that the library is here to help them. So it's sort of one-on-one. It's sort of like a roving reference desk in a way. That's what the self-access was. Self-access in and of itself, though, it has to do with supporting language learning. So I just wanted the library to be a piece of that. And then the Sakai course, that's just our course management, library skills, library research skills. That's online tutorials that are open and freely available. So those are just little glimpses of some other projects that we did, and you can find the links for those on the International Student Web Guide. And then I think the next slide is the next slide. That's my last one. That's actually what I look like now. That other picture was from me like 3 years ago. This is what I mostly look like now with the blue glasses. Those are pretty new. And so there's my email address. So I'm truly happy to talk to anybody about any of these projects at all. I would really, really encourage everyone to get involved. It's a very satisfying way to be a librarian, to really work with this group of students and to feel like we're all working towards the same common goals and that we're learning too, right? The librarians are learning too as well. So thank you for your attention for the Brock portion of that. I think now it's time for questions because we have 10 minutes left, right, Amanda?
That's right. Thank you so much, Karen and Mark and Anamika. You know, you guys heard everyone said that they are, you know, happy to speak to you in more detail about these projects. So here on this slide, you've got everyone's contact information, including my own. That Google link in the bottom right corner is to a Google Doc. It's a list of resources. So some of them are specific to our speakers, things that they have created, and some of them are more general resources, research about international students in academic libraries, including the Instruction for Diverse Populations Committee bibliography that we maintain, and there is a section there on international students as well. So we have about 10 more minutes. So let's go to some questions. I know that Mark, I think, answered some of his specific questions in chat. So if you had a question for Mark, you might want to check there. Anamika, I think, answered some in chat as well, and then also Karen, of course, has not had a chance to do that. So Karen, people want some more information about the personal librarian program. So could you talk about that a little bit more? Like, is it for all students? Is it just for the ESL students? How many are assigned to a librarian? That sort of thing.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Do you want me to put the camera back on? Sorry, so people could see me?
Sure.
Okay,
up to you.
I just wasn't sure. Okay, so the Personal Librarian Program, it's Active Campaign is the name of the system software that we're using here at Brock University. It's run by our marketing and communications people. So here at Brock, in a Canadian environment, there are very strict privacy regulations and laws. So the library cannot just send out emails across campus to whole groups of students. So I couldn't sit here in my office and compose an email message and just send it to all ESL students. It would never be allowed to be posted. So the only way we have of going out to every student in a group where the student will individually receive a message is through the marketing and communications group here on campus. So they control the administrative software end, which is why we had to get permission to use it. But so what the liaison librarians have done is each of us, because we have so many departments each of us works with, we chose 3 departments. Each one of us chose 3 departments that we were going to use with personal librarians. So I chose ESL services as one of my departments to send messages out to. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I think so. Okay. I'm going to give people a chance to enter any like broader questions that they might have about these sort of services. I think we have a few more questions coming in, but I would like to ask those of you who want to answer to talk just a little bit more about the instruction work that you do. So we've gotten a lot of great outreach ideas, but if any of you have any thoughts about being in the classroom and how you how you design instruction or how you teach international or ESL students.
Well, I'm happy to answer. I did see a quick question. Yes, I do have all 300 students, but that's just a drop in the bucket, really, because I have students who are French majors, Italian, Spanish. I have all the applied linguistics majors. I have undergraduate and graduate students as well. So each librarian here has a number of departments with varying levels of students that we support. And by support, I mean we provide one-on-one contact and we do library instruction as well. So for my library instruction, I managed to well, when I came, actually, the library was already a piece of the curriculum for ESL services. They already have library workshops embedded in their curriculum for the writing classes. So there's 5 levels of ESL services. I go into level 4 and level 5 because they have an assignment. So I go in and do library instruction for all of those students, like 4 sections of level 4, 4 or 5 sections of level 5. So it's usually like 30 classes a year, 10 per semester, and then 10 again in the summer.
Can I answer that one as well?
Of course, please.
So here we have, like I mentioned, we reach 100% of our ESL 15 classes every semester. And that's pretty amazing, given how many there are. We have a really close working relationship between our Library Learning Services Department here at University Park and the Applied Linguistics Department that runs the ESL program. And we also have Don Amsbury is in Library Learning Services designated as the ESL instruction librarian. It's not a part of her official title, but that is like her area of expertise. Along with Don, we also have several other instruction librarians who also have degrees in teaching ESL as well. So there's a lot of expertise there that they pull into that as well. Also, we have several different groups on campus and in the community that do ESL instruction besides the ESL 15 classes. We have an intensive English communication program that is for non-matriculated students who are working on their TOEFL. And we go into the upper levels of those classes as well. And we have English for Professional Purposes, Intercultural Center, which is for already matriculated students and even international faculty. And we work with them as integrating library instruction into those sessions as well. And then there's a nonprofit, Global Connections, which works with refugee populations and non-university internationals in the community that do some English instruction as well. And so we work with all of those groups. Last year, we also held a summit where we brought all of those groups together here in the library. We provided food and refreshments. And we did like a working lunch summit and talked with those different groups about the different instructional programs that we have, how we can integrate into what they're teaching, and then also tried to get an idea from them, what are the areas that they are all working in the same, same area where we might be able to put together instructional programming or, move things from one program to another easily. So those are some of the ways that we're getting into the instruction for international students.
Can any of you speak, maybe Anamika, maybe you want to start us out, can any of you speak to sort of what that looks like on the ground, like how you might approach instruction for international students differently than you might your domestic population?
So most of the students, I would say almost like 95% of the students in computer engineering and software engineering that I teach information literacy classes to or database search strategy classes, they're international students, and they haven't been in this country for a long time. And some of so what I usually do is I ask them questions to gauge their knowledge and then build up on that. For example, I would ask them, what databases have you used? And most of them will say, oh, I have used Oracle, I have SQL, used SQL, I have. So it kind of tells me that, okay, their concept of database is quite different. So I have to then tell them that by databases, I'm referring to the library information resources. And then they're like, oh, I see. And then I tell them what those library information resources provide. Usually with domestic students, they would already know, many of them, what those things are. But for them, it's not. Also, sometimes they will I would have conversations after the class or before the class while they're just hanging out, and I'm waiting as well for the students to come in. And they will ask questions such as, you know, I really need help with this, but I don't know who to approach. Is it okay to just email my professor, or should I go and talk to my professor? So some of these things are very trivial to domestic students because of the culture here, and they already know about it. But for international students, it is something very new.
Mm-hmm.
And I do help out with those kinds of difficulties they have. One thing I wanted to mention, Amanda, if we have 1 minute,
Sure.
Naomi asked a question, and she said, does anyone have language conversation groups in their library? So SGSU Library does not have, the university does not have such language conversation groups. But our library is sort of one of the few libraries that are joint with public library as well. So I know they run conversation groups, and that's very popular. So Naomi, if you do need more information, you can always email me, and I'll try to talk to the public library person and public librarian and give you more information on that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, well, we're bumping up on our 45 minutes here. I know that we didn't get to everyone's questions, and I know a lot of your questions were sort of related to logistics of specific programs. So those of you who want to know more about the name pronunciation workshop or the personal librarian program or the speed networking, I encourage you to get in touch with our speakers. You've got their information there on the screen. I, of course, will be delighted to be here to hear from you with any feedback you might have about the webinar in general and the potential for this becoming a series. And of course, as I mentioned, there's a document linked on the slide you see here that takes you to a Google Doc, and that'll be a living document. So the way it looks right this second, things will probably be added to that after this session. So I want to thank you all so much for being with us. Thank you again, Anamika, Mark, and Karen, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, everyone.